Hey everyone, this is the Top 10 Movie Podcast. This is Mulley, that's Mike. Say hi, Mike.
What's up, guys? Glad to have you back with us with another episode.
Look, guys, we have had to re-record this intro after recording this podcast because we have to give you some major warnings about this one. This one's probably the darkest list that we've recorded, and it just gets really triggering and dark. There are some very sensitive topics that we go into this podcast. So from the very top, we wanted to just go back in here and say this is a huge spoiler warning, not just for spoilers in movies that are coming up, but for the upcoming talk. We talk about some very serious things that happened in movies that triggered us, and I think it's going to trigger a lot of our audience too. There's going to be some talk here about sexual assault, about some depravity that happens in films. And if that's not your cup of tea, please skip this list. Please skip this podcast and go to another one, because this is a very different podcast than we normally record, right, Mike?
Yeah, especially want to highlight our female listeners because when I think of sexual assault, obviously I think we're programmed to think it only happens to women, but it happens to men, children as well. But the movies that are discussed in this episode, well, except one, they talk about women being sexually assaulted in a very brutal, sadistic, and evil manner. So we wanted to do this special intro for this episode, just to let you guys know, if you don't want to tune in, we don't mind. Please don't if you feel like you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if you continue on, just know that this gets pretty dark.
All right. So with that, we're going to now just start the normal podcast like we did. Thanks, guys.
And ladies, we love you all.
Bye. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ladies and worms. It is that time again. That's
Double time.
A terrible intro. It is time for the Top 10 Movie Podcast. I am Mulley. He is Mike. We are here once again in our aforementioned corner booth of our favorite recording.
It sounds like you said Afro mentioned.
I probably did. That's one thing. Listening back to these podcasts, I'm like, golly, I mumble too much. I need to be a lot more clear. That's all our, we have our own personal critiques. So that's one of mine. That I sound like I got chewing gum in my mouth sometimes. I apologize. Today's list is going to be a very interesting one, and one, Mike, I'm not afraid to say, that gave me a little trauma to put together. These are our top 10 movies that gave us PTSD. And certainly not making fun of PTSD, but just in the sense, for me, Mike, I'm defining this PTSD as post-movie trauma. So movies, for one reason or another, that lingered negatively in my mind for days, weeks, months, years after viewing. Even now, going through this list and creating this list forced me to have to remember some movies that really bothered me, and so thank you for that. First of all, I came up with the list, but now this, I almost wish I did, because it's bringing back all those old memories back up again. I'm like, oh.
Well, I'm proud of you, because this means you're challenging yourself, you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I appreciate it.
Oh, all right. Well, wait till the list comes out. You might not appreciate it. Mike, when I gave you this as a possible idea, what went through your mind about, was there an initial flash of movies? Like for me, there was an initial flash of a movie that I was thinking of particularly, and then how did you go about approaching the creation of the list?
Well, the very first thing after you came up with this list and we agreed to it was, I instantly had the image of the gif or the gif of the guy the guy in the window rubbing his hands in excitement, like, yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, really?
That's how I felt.
Okay.
But then I realized, you know what? Our temperament for what we see in movies is vastly different.
Which is great for the podcast.
I have a greater threshold, I think, for what I can see in a film versus you.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm the horror guy and you're not.
And you're the indie guy and I'm the more mainstream.
Yeah. So it made me excited, but then I realized I probably can't get to 10. So in that, this is going to be one for the fans, where we do 5 and 5 for a combined 10.
Yeah.
And per usual, I made this list about 3 hours ago, so right before pre-pro. But I did give it some thought. I actually put a little effort into it, as much as I could with the time frame. So I have my movies, and I have the director and some of the other movies they've done to kind of give you an idea of what this director is kind of known for in terms of tone of movie.
Okay. And one thing that I wanted to start doing a little bit more is also giving a short synopsis of the movie, just for those people that haven't seen it, so they kind of have an idea of what we're talking about. I think a lot of times we're approaching these lists because we've seen those movies, obviously, and then we forget that there may be some people that are listening that haven't seen it. So I want to give them a little bit of a foothold. But like you said, reading just a dry synopsis right off the page is pretty boring. So we want to be sure to give our own take about what we think the film is about. So we'll definitely strive to do that. But I want to just make sure that we're keeping that in the forefront of our mind too. That some of these people haven't seen this movie. So,
and see, I'm the exact opposite. I prefer to give the least amount, just enough to tease the listener to want to say, okay, I heard enough from Mike or Mulley on this. Let me see what this is about.
Yeah. This is not the episode for that. I think. Look, we're already at odds. Look at us. Look at us, folks. It's already, listen to every podcast you can, because it feels like the end is coming soon.
Hey, every episode we do, we get closer and closer to the
finale.
Mic, on Mic podcast.
That's right. The Off Mic, On Mic podcast with Mike only is coming soon, clearly, based on our conversation. No, here's why I'm saying this, because I do not believe that on my list I can actually explain my PTSD the way that I want to without spoiling major parts of these movies. Mm-hmm. So I put it in here as a preface, major spoiler warning to start off with, guys. So
also major trigger warning, because some of the movies on my list, they cover some very graphic visual imagery.
Yes.
Which is why they're on my list.
So if you're easily triggered or you want to watch these movies we're talking about, I would say either one, skip the episode, which we'd hate for you to have to do, but that might be something you need to do. Or two, that when I am talking about a movie that you actually do want to see, then fast forward the podcast until you hear Mike talk. And then you know I'm finished talking about it, and then Mike tell me. You might have to fast forward a little bit. But for me, look, all of these movies, they probably should have seen by now. I mean, you know this. We're talking about movies that are 20, 30 years old, some of them. It's at this point, if you get spoiled, that's kind of on you for not watching it. Again, we're going to give you the title of the movie up front, maybe.
I am, for sure.
Okay, we could do that. We could just make sure we do give you the title so you know that you can skip this part if you actually don't want to get spoiled. But again, I don't feel like I could truly tell you and explain my trauma without it. Mike, what are you doing with your eyes, man? What are you doing with your eyes? I'm talking here.
I'm sorry.
Mike is giving himself a self-examination of his eyes, covering one eye and then the other eye and then the other eye. Right in front of me, dude.
Sorry.
What are you doing?
I don't mean to distract you real quick. So I'm only wearing one contact today.
Oh, okay.
And so for whatever reason, the contact I'm wearing is more blurry than the contact that doesn't have the contact. So it's weird, but it's going to be a weird episode.
All right. This is going to be the PTSD one contact episode here. So, Mike, if you don't mind, I'll start it off.
I actually was hoping you would.
Okay, good. This is the movie that I was thinking of when I initially thought about this list, and this is a movie where I have a weird obsession with this movie. I like this movie.
So you like being traumatized?
I like elements of this movie. No, it's more of the golly, and this guy's given me so much trauma over the years. And let me just double check. Yeah. This is the only Stephen King movie on my list, but Stephen King over the years has given me a lot of trauma.
I already know what it is, I bet.
Okay. Yes, I think you probably do. Yeah, I was I don't like horror movies, and maybe one of the main reasons I don't like horror movies is that I was introduced to horror movies as a very young child. And specifically Stephen King horror movies from back then. The Kojos, the Carries. Cujo. See, I don't even care to get the name right. The Cujos, the Carries, is it Poltergeist? I'm not sure if that was his or not.
No, that's not his.
The Stand, the Langoliers, like a lot of different movies that I've been. Like, and there's some movies that I like. I think The Green Mile's great. I like The Green Mile. Like the more obviously the less horror films. Like I stay away from Pet Sematary. I stay away from, the It. I stay away from the obvious horror related. But as a child, I was introduced pretty early on, and I think that kind of scarred me. This is a movie that came out in 2007. It's called The Mist.
Yep, that's what I thought it was.
And the Mist, again, spoiler warning for you guys, is a movie that I just thought was a great idea initially, as this would be a great one location movie. As an independent filmmaker, you're always intrigued or thinking about one or minimum location movies because it's just easier to film, costs less, something that an indie filmmaker can do relatively easily, and then it's about the acting and the story that you can craft. And so I always thought, so anytime a one location movie kind of comes across my tape, I'm always interested in how they're going to make that work.
Hey, have you ever heard of this movie that it's shot all in one location? It's an amazing short film on YouTube. It's called Exit Stage Left.
It seems familiar.
Yeah, that's the movie I directed.
Oh, that would be
Selfless.
That's why.
Shameless plug.
That's why it rang a bell but didn't stick for some reason. Exit Stage
Left. It applies to trauma because the movie's about depression and anxiety.
I know, dude. Dude. You're talking about some trigger. You need to have a trigger warning before you watch that short.
I probably should. Yeah.
But no, this one, it actually doesn't take place just in one place, but for the majority of the movie, it is in one place, but it does go outside of it. But basically, a mist covers this. You think it's an entire town, but it's just a mist covers an entire area, and you're just following this one group of people where they get trapped in a supermarket, and the mist is surrounding the supermarket. They can't see outside, but everyone who goes outside, seemingly, you can hear it and then see it later, but they die a grisly death. Dude, thank you.
You love remixing words, which I actually kind of like.
I hope you like it at home too, and don't see it as just some ignorant dude saying words wrong. Thomas Jane is in this movie. Marcia Gay Harden, Laura Holden, William Sadler is in this movie. It's based on a 1980 novella by Stephen King, so not a story, a novella. Mm-hmm. And this particular film was written, directed, and co-produced by Frank Darabont, right? Who of Shawshank Redemption fame, mm-hmm. right?
Also, The Walking Dead. That's television, but
that is, yeah. He was the one who started that all off. Mm-hmm. Directed that first episode, which was awesome. Too.
Incredible.
2007, The Mist. So, again, spoiler. So, as this movie goes on, you're trying to figure out what's in the mist. You're not quite sure what it is. It's later revealed in a pretty dramatic way. Some kind of creature or creatures that they don't seem to be from this dimension or this planet. You're not quite sure. They're not quite sure. Part of the intrigue is not just what's on the outside, that only like a pane of glass is stopping from getting in. Part of the intrigue about this movie is that only a clear plane of glass is what's stopping the mist from getting inside.
From the supermarket, right?
Right, the supermarket.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of people in the supermarket, and the people that try to get out are clearly killed, or at least you think they are. It sounds grisly out there. Let me just say it like that. Anything in the mist is getting tore up, and so a lot of them stay in the supermarket and are trying to just barricade themselves in the supermarket against this unknown, unseeable horror that's happening out there. And a lot of the movie is just your imagination of what is out there and what isn't. Like, you're creating in your own mind what you think they look like.
Which I think is a deliberate
which is a great
decision, yeah.
It's just awesome because it builds so much tension. The monsters or whatever you really kind of make of them until you actually see parts of them.
Let me ask you this, though, before you go on.
Yeah.
Because we're able to imagine what we think the monsters look like, once you saw them, did you feel disappointed because what you had in your mind was so much more frightening?
No, I think especially upon repeat viewings, and this is one of the rare movies I do kind of repeat view. I get a little bit interested in. The trauma's still there, and you'll find out why in a minute, but there's still something intriguing about it. No, I'm more disappointed about the CGI. I think the CGI is disappointing when it comes to
it. Looks a little rough, yeah.
It looks like, actually, I saw special effects in the 90s that looked better. And it's being 2007, that's troublesome.
Yeah.
But budget restrictions or whatever, it happens, speed, mainly time. They don't have enough time to really do the right renders and things on them. So anyway, regardless, the trauma from this movie comes from the ending, and I think everybody knows as I watch this movie, this is not a satisfying ending. This is one of the most traumatic and stick to your ribs that you will never forget endings in a movie, which in that way I think it's memorable, but I don't think in a very positive way. Now, I might not go back to this movie as much, though, if it didn't have that ending that really soured me, because it did leave a taste in my mouth. Even it was sour to a point where I've thought about that movie often afterwards. But basically, a group from the supermarket, including Thomas Jane and his family,
it's Thomas Jane and his son, and then two other randoms.
Right. They escape the supermarket. They're able to get into a vehicle, and they're driving toward what they hope is the end of this mist. But they get to a point where I forget why they had this. I think they were out of gas.
Yeah.
They did what they weren't able to get out of the mist. So they're only, eventually they come to the solution of, we're going to die in this vehicle. We have a gun with 4 bullets. Actually, 3 bullets.
It was only 3. Yep.
Yeah, and there's 4 of them in the car. And so before the monsters get us, we're going to go ahead and self-delete, take care of ourselves, in order to spare us the pain of getting eaten. And so,
his son's only like 8 years old, I think, in this movie, by the way.
So the father, Thomas Jane's character, elects to be the one who has to do that grisly job, and then he'll be the only one left to live with it until the monsters get him, presumably.
Yeah.
And he goes through with it, and it's horrific, and it's the worst thing ever, and he's screaming, and then he submits to his fate even more willingly than ever, because he's ready just to get out of the car, get into that mist, and have the monsters do what they will to him, because he's done the most horrific thing any parent can do. And that's kind of biblical. I was thinking about it too. There's a Old Testament biblical to that. An angle of that. Anyway, nevertheless, I need to get this over with. So basically, he steps out of the car, and he's getting ready, prepared to be eaten. And then suddenly the mist starts to clear, and he starts to see military people come by him. And you realize at that moment that he was a mere seconds away from being rescued, and this mist being cleared, and these animals being driven back to wherever they came from. Which I think I read that it was some another dimension, and they were being forced back into their own dimension. It might have been a fan theory that I read, but anyway, Thomas Jane now presumably has to live with what he did, and it was just, if they had just waited just a second longer, a minute longer, they would have all survived, including his very young son. So super traumatic, has stuck with me for years. Can't forget that ending. Was mad about it at first, and now I'm still. I might have watched it one time, the ending, but I'm still interested in, the concept of the movie, and a big part of the movie. And this is the last thing I'll say about it, because we've talked too long about it. But a big part of that movie is not what's in the mist, but what's happening in the supermarket. How people are turning on themselves. An actual religious group starts to pop up out of this.
Wild.
And that's just Stephen King. Stephen King's. I think that's a Stephen King thing.
But I think it also speaks to society, because
it would be
you saw how quickly the foundations of humanity broke down so fast.
Yeah, too fast. I think that's a quick turn for me.
Same. But
maybe what's exacerbating the situation is the trauma that's happening outside. So maybe that's what's really sparking up the, patriotism or religious finality.
Well, you see what happens to the psyche when fear starts to set in.
Yeah.
Like how quickly these people in the film start to radicalize with this religious faction that's rising up, and everybody's kind of
too quick of a turn for me.
I thought so too.
But
I'm pretty sure
I've not been in that situation.
In the book, because Stephen King's books are, this is a novella, you said, so who knows how long this was.
No, I don't think it was very long.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, that's it, The Mist. And you knew what it was even before I started talking about it, after I mentioned Stephen King. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because it's one of the most polarizing and bold endings in the movie in cinematic history.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw it in the theater too. I almost wanted to applaud, but I didn't want people to think I was sick in the head. But I appreciated that choice in that film because 9 times out of 10, filmmakers are not going to have that ending in the movie. They're going to have the happy ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has made it stick in my mind, and I've never.
And to me, I think that's the ultimate goal of a film is to have long-lasting reputation with audiences.
Yeah.
It's talked about for years and years, and that's what we're doing with this movie now.
I did that. All right, what's your first one here?
All right, that was a great way to start off. Lots of trauma in that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm experiencing it over here all over again, having to talk about it.
So you're familiar with the director Alex Garland?
Yes.
Yeah, he's directed Ex Machina, Annihilation, Civil War. Also wrote those scripts. Civil War came out earlier this year, which is one of my favorites of the year. That's going to be in a later episode. And he also wrote the script for the Carl Urban Judge Dredd movie.
Oh yeah.
Wrote the script for the 28
There's a
Days
script
Later
for that
films.
movie?
I mean, it was. I'm sure it was paper thin. See, I did that paper thin. So I'm a fan of all those movies. I've seen them all. He's always going to bring a different element to his films that are unique, and also again bold choices. But the movie I have on this list that I would say gave me PTSD is the movie called Men. Came out in 2022. Definitely an art film. You know, it's not going to be like a mainstream, big budget, IP, popcorn flick. This came out in February or March of 2022, right around the same time as Matt Reeves' The Batman came out. Okay. So I saw those two very close together. And so this movie's about a woman who recently lost her husband to suicide, and she goes to basically stay in this nice big Victorian house out in the English countryside. Visually stunning. This is, greens are lush, like the colors correction. This movie's amazing. But the most disturbing part of this film is a lot of the imagery is basically shaped in the form of females' private parts.
Okay.
And it's
nice way to dance around that.
Yeah, well, and this all doesn't get revealed till the end of the third act. And I'm gonna get to the actual more PTSD aspect after I explain it. So in the sky, this woman's trying to escape this guy she thinks is after her. She's running off into the street in the middle of the night, and she looks up in the sky and notices some of the cloud and stars are in this female's body part shape. And when I first saw that, I'm thinking, there's no way that's really what I'm thinking it is. Sure enough, they cut back to it a couple of different times, almost like they want to make sure the audience knows, yeah, we're showing you this. Thought it was a little bizarre, because I've never really seen Alice Garland go this route, more artsy. Then she goes back into the house, and she has to basically be confronted by this person or entity that's after her. And this person births a full-grown human man out of his back.
Whoa.
And the opening is, again, the same shape as the female body part, and the body that comes out is her dead husband.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But then it continues. This birthing process happens 3 or 4 different times. Each time a different body or animal is birthed from this thing. Very bizarre, very disturbing. You know me, I have a high threshold for what I can see in a movie.
Yeah.
That was bizarre.
This was the limit for you?
The limit was realizing, oh wait, I'm actually here with a female watching this.
Oh, no.
Female friend of mine, yeah. That's what made it weird. I remember I didn't even want to look at her.
Yeah.
And when I would look at her, like I could tell she didn't want to look at me. So then I quickly stopped looking at her and just had to stay laser focused on the screen.
Got you.
I was like, we're at the very end. The credits have to be coming soon. Let's just ride this thing out. Let's not say a word. To the point where the credits start rolling, the lights come on. We kind of have to sit there a little bit and not say a word. We looked at each other. We locked eyes, which was really uncomfortable.
Marinate in that.
We did. And not something you want to marinate in.
No.
Very disturbing. The imagery was super bizarre, out of left field.
Well, she's got to listen to this podcast so she can give you her take on that side. We want to hear your side of what was going on in that theater that night.
For sure. So much so that the car ride back was very awkward, too.
I would think so.
And it's a movie that's...
You can't talk about the movie, right?
Since then, we haven't really ever we agree with it. We're not talking about this ever again.
It never happened.
It never happened. Yeah, it's like that old TV show that Jonathan Frakes used to host, Fact or Fiction. No, Beyond Belief.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they'd give you the story, and at the end, he'd say which one was fact and which one was fiction.
It's false.
It's false. It never happened. It's a fabricated story. There's a compilation of him all saying all the different versions of it's false. It's hilarious. But so that's Men, Alex Garland, never watching it again. I was traumatized, and I don't get traumatized.
Yo.
And by the way, the rest of my list, it only gets worse.
Oh my gosh, dude! I'm having PTSD just hearing your retelling of the story, dude. This is okay. All right, this is getting rough. Okay, mine continue to be a little bit more lighthearted up until my serious trauma there in the ending list. So let's bring it back up to again another movie a lot of people agree on is one of the more triggering movies in the sense that it was just a bad ending to what was seemingly a promising film. In retrospect, we probably should have expected it from this film, but at the time, M. Night Shyamalan, everything that he did seemed to like have this wonderful twist that you could, no matter what, no matter how bad the movie was to begin, you knew there was going to be a little something about it that was going to be different and quirky, and it wasn't going to quite end the way you thought it was. And that's one of the reasons you want to go to one of his films, or at least in the past, you've wanted to go to one of his films.
Right.
I'm not sure that he's still even close to what he was back when he was, doing Sixth Sense and Signs and those kind of movies, Lady in the Water and that kind of thing.
I think the idea of the twist and trying to figure out what it is from the audience perspective has now superseded the actual movie itself and the idea itself.
Yeah, he's become a parody a bit of his own. But look, I'm not taking zero away from him. Like, The Sixth Sense was amazing, and his run of films that I think I anticipated was not matched by very many people. Not very many people that are known for a certain kind of filmmaking.
Right.
Like, that's a rare group. So big props to him. And there was a time where he was the hottest director in the world to me, for a while. But that time has passed, is what we're saying. And this movie helped make that happen. Yes, it's The Happening from 2008, starring Mark Wahlberg. Zooey Deschanel is in that movie. John Leguizamo's in that movie. And Mark Wahlberg, in one of his most, I think, I don't want to say like boring performances, but he was certainly dulled down from what the kind of the character that we've known him to be in some movies.
Well, he's more of an action star, so it's definitely a more subdued performance from him.
Right.
And when we're used to seeing somebody who's shooting people and fighting people and gritty, now be this mild-mannered
A high school science teacher.
It was weird.
Yeah, that was tough to swallow a bit. I think he's a good actor. I'm not going to say great actor, but I think he's a good actor. My own opinion. High school science teacher, a little bit of a stretch, but that's not even what this movie. It's got so many other things going on that I don't think even that registered to anybody. But there's some kind of environmental phenomenon that's happening mysteriously that's causing people to inexplicably commit suicide in dramatic ways, and in intriguing as a story plot line, as a trailer going into the movie. I think a lot of people were kind of hyped on, okay, this is a comeback for M. Night. We know it's going to be some really cool twist at the end, but it wasn't. And I think as someone who watched it, I believe it had to be premiere weekend because the theater was packed. And I have never, since this day and ever before, been in a group of people that were united in how much they disliked the ending of a film. And when that twist was revealed, to me, it didn't even have any I think in thinking about it, days, weeks, years later, particularly there seemed to be a certain environmental protection agenda to the whole thing, or teaching about climate change. Like, that was kind of maybe a lesson they were trying to get across through, which people hate to have. I think a lot of people hate to watch a movie thinking there might be some kind of hidden agenda in it.
Remember that Wayne's movie "Don't Be a Menace to South Central" while drinking your
Yeah.
juice in the
Yeah.
message.
Oh,
Message.
yeah. So, but in this particular case, it wasn't even about that. It was about how lame the reveal of what was going on was. It was so lame. There was a universal groan in that theater, and so that's anytime I think about that movie, and I think a lot of people will join me in this. There's an automatic like ugh feeling from it, especially if you were any kind of hyped prior to the movie coming out, to the trailer. I think it's one of the rare cases where the trailer does a better job of the movie. Well, that's not even rare, but the trailer just did a good job of hyping you up. But the movie failed to live up to even a fourth of what the trailer seemed to promise. And I know I'm not alone in that because I was in that theater and there were a lot of people that were upset. So, The Happening 2008, not so much for something that was traumatizing within the film, like the things we've been talking about before and the things that we will continue to talk about. But in this particular case, the PTSD just comes from the overwhelming lack of enjoyment that people got from that ending. It stuck with me, and that something that seemingly had so much promise behind a director who's had so much success at the time to come out with something as lame as that. Like Lady in the Water for sure was a drop based on what he had done before. That was the first drop I remember from him. Like, all right, this is it. The guy with the one armed big dude, and they all okay. It was a little wild, but it was a step down from what this was like. This was jumping over a cliff type letdown. And it was universal based on what I saw and heard.
I think that was the movie that came right after Lady in the Water too.
It might be.
So that was the beginning of his fall off. Lady in the Water.
I don't know. I thought it was a lot closer to Sixth Sense, which we're talking about 90s.
Well, no, because you had Sixth Sense, then you had Signs, then you had the movie about the woods and the monster.
That's right, but I thought it was Sixth Sense, and then maybe it was Signs and Lady in the Water. Because there was a momentum that he had prior to Lady in the Water that I thought stepped down.
Right. But something you said at the beginning of prefacing this movie is a lot of his movies since his fall off are being touted in the marketing campaign as M. Night Shyamalan is back. Back to true form. And when you say that, it pushes expectations higher than they should be.
Yes. It can't just be enjoyed for the movie that it is, because they're trying to get people to come.
Yes.
So they're going to shout his name.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a good choice. I hated that movie too. So yeah, we're on the same page.
But it might not be traumatizing to you.
Well, it wasn't. It was. I felt like I wasted 2 hours I'll never get back with that kind of an ending.
Yeah. But now that I even think about that movie, it lingers.
Yeah.
The negative reaction I had to it, I can still feel that.
True.
And haven't seen it. I haven't watched it since.
So what do you think about the idea that a movie is successful in reaching its goal, no matter the ending, if people are still talking about it years after?
I don't agree because, just because you're talked about a lot of times, it's not good. I mean,
because bad publicity is still publicity, regardless, right? So
no, because and I get it, and I've kind of started to make a turn on that. We've talked about this in the past. Like, I've always been on the train of like I want more content, not less. So I don't care if you remake some of my favorite movies. It doesn't change that the original's out there. It introduces it to a new generation, and like, oh, you don't like the remake? Watch the original; it's way better, and it maybe brings a bigger audience. Now I'm starting to change on that a bit after we've talked, and I've had more time to think about it. Is that it is bad publicity is not always good, and it can tarnish the image of something that was really good. It could really start to begin to tarnish the original. I think the Terminator series is a good example of that. Like, I heard recently that James Cameron is talking about taking back over the Terminator series.
I've heard that as well.
And maybe potentially directing another one. He needs to. Honestly, I think he should. If it's not already dead, that's the thing. Like all these iterations of the Terminator story beyond Terminator 2, which I think is one of the greatest movies ever made, the greatest sequel ever made. I'd say a candidate for that. I think Terminator 2 is leaps and bounds better than Terminator 1, although the one wouldn't exist without the other. The subsequent sequels that have continued since have done nothing but tarnish that franchise to the point where now I think even Terminator 2 is hurt by its status as one of the best films ever made, potentially. Certainly one of the best action films ever made, one of the best sci-fi films ever made. That image is tarnished because of 3 and the 4 and the Salvation. And although I like Salvation, just you keep piling on negative experiences onto this franchise, and it does seem to start to be sinking the entire ship. No matter how high Terminator 2 in my mind has gotten, it's starting to be pulled down by the weight of all these bad sequels. So yeah, so I'm tending to shift a little bit on that. So if I'm thinking about it in that way, then yeah, negative, remembering a movie for its negative things, I don't think is a net positive at all.
Okay.
I don't think it adds anything to it because I can remember the happening is bad. Definitely doesn't make me want to go see it. So all I do is have a bad memory of that movie, and I'm preaching it out to the literally 1 or 2 people listening right now.
Well, you're preaching for sure. I feel like I'm back in a
Oh, my bad.
Southern Baptist church looking at my watch.
Oh goodness, sorry about that. Yeah, it is a Sunday.
When a Southern, if you've ever been to a Southern Baptist church that's black, led by a black preacher, whenever they say, "I'm almost finished," just hunker down because you're not going to be done either.
Especially if there's football coming up, and they're just going to go right past the football.
Yeah, you're in a good mood because you've been like really on some tangents with your episodes. I'm kind of getting mine in and out, but you're like, no, we're deep diving on mine.
Dude, I think I am desperately running away from the trauma that yours is causing in my head, dude. That last one, Men. Oh, I'm so glad you told me.
Well, that's why mine are going to be brief. Mine are going to be brief. So, and on this one, on number 2 on my list, I'm jumping right in.
Yeah.
This is Requiem for a Dream.
Yes, I do know this.
Darren Aronofsky, who's given us The Wrestler, Black Swan, Noah. That's the Russell Crowe, Noah and the Ark.
Dude, that's some crazy movies.
And then the most recently,
The Wrestler's great.
The Whale with Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's kind of run the gamut of a lot of different genres, a lot of different concepts and ideas. But Requiem for a Dream is one of those that you only need to see once and you get it. It's not one of those, I gotta watch this again, or that's so good, I need to revisit this in a decade or 20 years from now. No, you see it once, you don't need to see it again. It's cool to be talked about because I think there are some things that to be talked about. I'm not gonna do that today. I'm just giving you why I think it's traumatic or can cause audiences PTSD. My friend pitched this movie to me before I ever saw it as, Mike, if there's somebody that you know that's on drugs and you want them to quit, show them this movie. Which I didn't believe because that's a very bold premise and a bold stance to take on a movie. Because I kept thinking there's no way a movie was going to have that kind of impact on somebody that's strung out, And so I was like, well, okay, prove it to me. Let's just watch it. So watch this movie, and it's about Jared Leto and I think it's Marlon Wayans. They're like best friends, roommates, and Jennifer Connelly's in this. Yeah, I know it's young Jennifer Connelly. Ellen Burstyn's also in this as well. And so these characters all have different vices in the movie. And so Ellen Burstyn is addicted to I'm not even gonna say because I don't remember. This movie's so old and I haven't seen it in so long. I've got gaps in my memory in terms of what happens in the movie. But there's specific moments.
I think you're forgiven for not going back and researching. Because these are all movies that we're traumatic about. We don't want to have to go revisit them.
But I just remember the ending. It's one of those movies that leaves you with a very somber ending and kind of leaves you speechless. Because by the end of it, I believe it's Marlon Wayans' character ends up in jail after being caught with drugs and or in the hospital, I believe. Maybe that was Jared Leto. Ends up in the hospital. He had to get his arm cut off from the elbow down because he had done so much shooting up that it just was messing up his body. Marlon Wayans ended up in jail and was going through withdrawals by the end. And then Jennifer Connelly, to make money, she was a part of this nasty group of rich white guys who would pay women to do sexual acts and favors for money, and like a little underground brothel type situation. So there's one really graphic scene, trigger alert, listeners, where she has to use a sex toy on another woman while these other men in suits are just surrounding them, basically like yelling and chanting and screaming and throwing money on them. It's super sick, it's super sadistic. And then Darren chooses to put the camera right in Jennifer Connelly's face during this scene. And it's some of the most disturbing imagery you'll ever see. The look on her face is so believable. And I'm just sickening watching this happen to her.
Good night.
It's really sad because there are people who go through these types of things that are looking for money to get the next score,
Right.
or they have these addictions to these things. And I finally at the end understood why my friend said what he said. I think if you watch this and you're on drugs or addicted to anything, you watch that and you see how, as the film progresses, the addiction takes over these people's lives and how they're affected by it.
Wow. Yeah, that's. Oof. Okay, man. I'm telling you what.
Well, listen, I'm
going
gonna,
through it today.
I'm not going to pull any punches because I want the
Yeah.
listeners to see why these are so traumatic.
Yeah, you're doing good, man. I'm not. I am. If I was doing drugs for prior to your description, I am healed and ready to rock.
Well, listen, like I said, it gets worse from there
The
too.
DARE program. I'm going to join
The
it.
DARE program.
Boy, yeah, I knew. I know just enough about that movie to stay away from it.
Oh, so you've never seen it?
I've never seen it.
Ooh, yep. Don't. You're a law-abiding citizen. You don't have those vices, so you don't need to watch it.
Yeah. And you know what? If I wasn't a law-abiding citizen, that might be the reason to watch it.
There you go.
So before I go into my definitely more trauma triggering movies for myself, which are my last two, I have to go kind of one more again. A lot of my PTSD just comes from bad movies. Like literally bad movies could just fill this list for me. Just because, look, if I'm going to go to the theater and I'm going to pay money, I'm going to buy popcorn, I'm going to go sit in a theater around strangers and watch a movie, that movie for me has done enough hype internally for me to want to go and do and spend those things and go walk into a theater. The older I'm getting, the more movies that I watch, the less I go to the theater because I am more critical about the things that I watch. So if you get me into a theater because of an intriguing premise, because of an actor, because of a great trailer, which is a combination of all three, and I'm willing to go and take the leap, pay the money, go to the theater, then you hooked me to a point where I'm hyped about it. I want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So when a majority of those are meh or disappoint, they can give me a bit of PTSD because every time I'm disappointed by a movie, the less I want to go to the next one. So the most latest example of that for me is a film that it looked great in the trailers, had a bona fide number one top movie star in it, and that's Brad Pitt. The movie's called Ad Astra from 2009, starring Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, and Ruth Negga. I mean, I'm saying it right.
No, I believe you, man. I know who she is. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Just I wasn't prepared to hear her name out loud.
Okay, can you edit that out? I don't want it to be bad.
No,
All
that's staying in. That was funny, man.
Oh golly,
That's her name. What you want me to do?
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Ruth. Yeah,
Let's leave it. It is what it is.
I'm not even just
You can't
trying
pronounce it the other way because then you're really gonna get canceled.
I know. I mean, I even showed Mike what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
Listeners, he's not being racist. I promise.
Ugh.
I vouch for him. He's good.
Directed by James Gray, which I don't know a lot about James Gray, but
Nobody does anymore.
so basically, this is a movie, Ad Astra, about an astronaut who embarks on a mission on the outer edges of the solar system in order to try to find his missing father. And I went to Reddit on this one, and I'm talking too loud again. I went to Reddit on this one, and this Reddit user by the name of Make Believe the Good had this response about what the meaning of the movie was, and I thought it was a perfect synopsis and sums up why this movie was such a disappointment and gave me PTSD about it. So it had so much promise, I thought. I was looking forward so much to this movie. And so a lot of my PTSD is just disappointment.
So I was going to say, your PTSD is more grounded in disappointment, not so much that it's real trauma, like imagery.
Let me say why.
Okay. Because I'm having a hard time really buying into these choices for this type of list.
Okay. Your definition of what the PTSD for you is different from me, mainly because you're willing to see more fringe and horrific things.
Right.
You're open to it. I am not. So we are both very active in our film news and research. And I watch all the trailers when they come out. I have a huge filter for the movies that I watch.
Right. True.
So I am filtering out movies that would potentially have people getting birthed out of their backs.
Gotcha.
I'm not watching that.
Right.
I'm not watching a lot of indie films. I'm just not. I've done it in the past. Some of them have, they've just been bad. They've not been like traumatizing.
Yeah.
But I don't expect them to be good. So a lot of my trauma is more about post-movie disappointment. So,
I mean, I'm with you because I do believe disappointment can lead into trauma or PTSD because this is just outside of the whole film spectrum, but in real life.
Yeah.
If I'm 5 years old, and my father abandons me and comes back every so many years and we get in touch and he's like, hey, I'm going to come get you. I was doing this and that, but I got my head back on straight. My life is in a good place. I'm going to come get you and spend some time together. And time after time, he doesn't show. He lets me down. That continues to trigger trauma and the disappointment. Because when my dad keeps saying he's going to show up, he never shows up.
Gotcha.
He doesn't come through.
So, and it's not just limited to parental disappointment.
Yes.
It's also disappointment in all different facets of your life.
So when you have a movie, you keep getting let down by these movies.
Right.
It causes disappointment, which is a form of trauma, so I get it.
Okay.
I had to make the link for myself to buy into what you were saying.
Yeah, and I think where your trauma, it seems more like triggering real life events. My trauma is more lighthearted movie stuff.
Because the stuff I have on my list speaks almost to some degree, and the others that I have left on the list will explain it more, but speaks to the depravity of men in general.
Yeah, and I think it's the differences in good and bad for both. I mean, the difference between two lists. Your PTSD list would be PTSD in real life. If those things happened in real life, you would have definite trauma and need therapy for it. Mine is simply movie related in the sense, not movie like retelling of true stories or telling of stories, more the actual act of movie going.
Exactly.
So my trauma is more like bad movies, or movies that gave me a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Yours is like actual physical violence that someone experienced in the movie that is mirrored in real life, and that gives you trauma.
Yes.
So they're two different lists for sure. And I don't want to do, I'm not trying to, my list, because it's a little bit more on the lighter end, I'm not trying to take away from serious things.
I don't want to sound like I'm trying to invalidate yours either. Right. Yeah.
So I just approached my list. Maybe we should have said that in the beginning, or figured it out in the beginning. Is that I've just approached my list as a movie goer. You approach your list as a person. As a human being.
That's true.
All right. So Ad Astra, this Reddit user, Make Believe the Good's response, I think perfectly sums up my disappointment in the movie. His explanation of what this movie is a man is sent after his father, who is stationed deep in space and has broken contact with Earth. Man realizes his father is full of it and heads back home. And that's the movie. And that is the movie.
That's extremely accurate. Yeah.
And that if you would have teased me with that, I would have I pass.
Me too.
Instead, you teased me with Brad Pitt and with awesome graphics.
Yeah, nice visuals. Yep.
And Interstellar level graphics. I was hoping this would be the Interstellar I wanted Interstellar to be. And it was that. So,
Which also then just tells me you were disappointed with Interstellar.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, look, going back, I mean, visually it's terrific. The Matt Damon turn, I think, is great. I think Matthew McConaughey is awesome, and Hathaway was wonderful. A lot of great things in that movie. I love Christopher Nolan films in general, right? Again, it's a movie you have to watch, I think, multiple times in order to try to wrap your head around it.
And you don't enjoy
And
it.
it's sometimes.
Okay.
And it's just so heady. It is such a heady movie. It's a direction that he went for a while. I don't know if Oppenheimer's like this, but definitely Tenet is on that level. Like Tenet is Interstellar after seeing Requiem of a Dream. Like that's Tenet. So it's so heady. And he's just going in that direction for a while. I'm hoping that I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. That's still again. But I'm hoping that Oppenheimer, because it's more based in real life, took a step away from that headiness. That's not so intellectual that you can't get your head around it the first time you watch it. I need multiple viewings. So that's what's my issue with Interstellar. Is that I guess I didn't feel very satisfied with how it ended and how it reconnected. Although I really did love the fact that he was able to come back and see his daughter. That was great. I did like that part. But the whole understanding what happens in a black hole part of it was not so much that it caused me PTSD, but it's just there was a lot to try to figure out without explanation.
But with Ad Astra, there's that's all taken out. It's all the fluff is taken out. This
Yeah,
movie is
it's just a bad movie.
Yeah, there's no substance there whatsoever.
There's just a bad movie.
Yeah. You know, in this movie, they try to use his relationship with his father to coax him into being the one to go after him.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a cool, little sliver of concept and execution. But the line that the explanation this guy gives on Reddit is perfect.
Yeah.
Had that been the synopsis, and had I known, from now on, I think maybe give me the synopsis with no trailer, and let's decide without the visuals, without the crescendo of the music, without the hero shot. Just give me the synopsis as the trailer.
Dude.
A lot less movies will be seen that way. Let me tell you.
Dude, it was the most wonderful Christmas present wrapping you've ever seen. That totally got you excited for what was inside. And when you opened it up, it was a plastic dog turd. Like it was nothing like the wrapping.
Yeah.
And that's the PTSD post Ad Astra for me. And I think mistrusting Norm more than ever of films that Brad Pitt is in, because I just kind of felt like, wow, I can't. His judgment of what is a good movie maybe is not on par with what I like. So, the train movie that he was in, I was leery about.
Oh, Bullet Train.
Yeah, I was like, what is he doing in that movie?
That's how I felt.
So it wasn't an automatic even watch for me. But I'm glad I watched it afterwards. It was good. I liked it, but Ad Astra, not. So again, a lot of my disappointment comes from self-hype, wanting it to be the next great movie. I think it's a symptom of having seen too many.
I was gonna say you've seen too many good movies.
Not even that. I've seen so many movies. Now my definition of what's good is so high that rarely any film that I watch ever even touches it. So that means nearly every movie that I watch now is kind of a disappointment.
Yeah,
sucks.
And for me, I think I give
never lives up.
A wider range of movies more of a shot than you do.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a wider opportunity to maybe get disappointed because you're casting a wider net, less quality.
That's
movies,
true. Yeah.
Less money, less acting, known acting ability, and there's a lot of what ifs. But then when you find that gem in the middle of all that, it's so good.
But that's what keeps me going. So the disappointment is easily erased for me, whereas for you it lingers.
Yeah. Ad Astra didn't help that linger. Next two, though, are more personally traumatic for me. So I'm ending strong with
good.
With the PTSD.
All right, I love it. I'm looking forward to it. So number 3 on my list, this is going to be actually the worst of the worst in terms of what happens and the content and the visuals in this movie. So for sure, anybody listening, trigger warning, because this one's going to be harsh. This movie's called Irreversible. I don't even know if you even heard of this movie.
I'm thinking of
It's a French film. The director is Gaspar Noé. This movie stars Monica Bellucci and Vincent Cassel. The original version of this film was released, and it was in I call it Memento style. So it's ending to the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they call that, I guess, non-linear. I guess non-linear is when they kind of bounce back and forth all throughout the whole thing. This one just plays in reverse.
Okay.
And the movie's called Irreversible. And then later on, a few years after the original release, he went back and he re-released the chronological order version of the film. But
Do you like that? Did they go back and do that? Did it help understand it more?
I prefer keep it the way you originally saw your vision,
too.
because I think that was his choice, because the reverse order is the movie he submitted to Cannes, the film festival Cannes in France. So that was a very deliberate and conscious decision. I think leave it as it is. To me, it sounds like somebody said something to him and got in his ear, and eventually he gave in. And I think as creators, we already have to sacrifice and give in to so much of what other people say, and I think you lose your creative vision when you listen to other people when it's your baby.
Yeah.
Do it the way you did it the first time, the way you intended it to be. But yeah, so Irreversible. I'm gonna get right to it. This movie, it takes place all in one day. You know, I love movies that take place all in one day or in a 24-hour period. But this is not an enjoyable movie by any means. It's about a woman who gets brutally sexually abused. And it's shown in all of its graphic nature. It's a full, I believe, 10-minute sexual assault, and it's shown for the full 10 minutes. And there's no music playing. It's just her and this guy in this corridor out in the streets of France. And it is just hard to watch. I mean, you just are speechless. And I think there's only so many people that can even sit through it and then still finish the movie. I know a bunch of people I've read up on this movie. They get to this part, they either have to fast forward through it or they just don't even finish the movie. They don't even care anymore at this point. And it's funny because if you watch the original version, that's from end to beginning, they catch the guy and he gets brutally beaten. But that's the first part of the movie. When you watch the original cut and you think, okay, this is sick, because they show the guy's head get bashed in by Monica Bellucci's boyfriend, Vincent Cassel. Because if they catch the guy, it's him and his friends. They get him holed up in this bathroom. And the way it's shot, it's like the camera's right in your face. So that POV is there. And you feel like you're right there in there. And so you don't even have any context to what's happening. You just see a group of guys bashing this guy's brains in. And it's all in there. And it was in black and white. So then you get to this scene. And you're like, oh, okay, now we're starting to figure out what's happening. But dude, 10 minutes of, 30 seconds of a female getting sexually assaulted on film is too much. And this is definitely a shock factor film. I think there's some places that you can't even get this movie. Like, it was banned in a lot of places in the world. And then there's also dialogue from the assailant while he's in the act. I'm not even going to repeat it because it's just the sickest of the sick. But yeah, it's a tough watch. It's not one I'll ever watch again, kind of like Requiem for a Dream, Men, everything on my list, I'm not watching again. But this is by far the worst of the worst. It speaks to me to the most evil, deplorable parts of humanity. Because like you said, my list is based on things that happen in real life.
Yeah.
And these things happen.
They do.
And it's no one's immune. Women, children, doesn't matter what race.
Men.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just this is not a recommendation episode today, y'all, at all.
This is reminding me of 8mm, the
Nicolas Cage, man.
That could have made this list.
It definitely could have.
Because, but it's almost as if, he has to watch a horrific film.
Mm-hmm. It's a snuff film.
It's a snuff film. Yeah. And it sounds like yours is almost qualifies as a snuff.
Well, this movie is on any list you look up of top 10, top 50 or the worst movies. I've seen, like, some titles are top 10 movies that you may not be able to finish or you never want to watch again, or top 10 banned movies. This is on all those lists.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. And that's the thing. Good night. My list, especially, would be starting compared to yours. is so drastically different, dude. Because I wouldn't even think about watching a film like
Yeah.
that. I wouldn't even be.
Well, I'll be honest. I only watched this because I knew what it was about, and there was a part of me that was curious
Yeah.
to see, like, is it really this bad? And it was worse than even what I could imagine how bad it could be, even knowing what it's about.
Jeez. Well, we've talked about Deliverance before on the podcast, and how traumatizing that was for me. And I mean, that should have been on this list, but rather than my mind was just in a kind of a different space about the PTSD part of it. I wanted to kind of cover a little bit more wide variety, but now we're going to be getting into my like personal, like I can't watch this film again type situation with these last two. All right, Mike, here we go. I'm not even going to attempt these names. There's a bunch of foreign names on here. This is a movie that I watched as a child, and I should not have watched. This was made for children. It should not have been made for children. This is 1985, so for some reason, Hollywood and filmmakers at the time were into movies that really liked to scare children. They loved to make movies that had horror elements in it. Gremlins comes to mind. Ghostbusters comes to mind. I'm sure there's a plethora of other animated movies. The Secret of Nymph and those kind of Don Bluth type film. Even those were traumatic. This movie is called Return to Oz. And do you remember this movie?
Of course.
Dear Lord.
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually saw this in school.
Jeez Louise. I think I don't remember how I was introduced to it. I think it was just a movie that was on television a lot. And I think that's where I was introduced to this movie. I don't think at the theater, but basically, this is a sequel to a poorly made sequel to The Wizard of Oz.
No, but more true to what the actual novels were. The novels were more dark.
Yeah, I'm not in it. Then I would not have read those novels, but ironically released by Walt Disney Pictures, which is crazy. But the synopsis of this, I even have a hard time reading it, but after a stay in a mental hospital, Dorothy returns to the land of Oz to find it in ruins. She must embark on a quest to save her friends and restore the magical land. And it's trippy, and it's got some very scary elements for children. The statues come to mind for me. All the in the movie Wizard of Oz from the 30s, it's lighthearted. There's the witch, but she's about the scariest thing.
It's bright and colorful.
Yes, and they're dancing, and the scarecrow is the Tin Man. They're fun. They're dancing. They're singing. It's the complete opposite of all of that.
They're called the wheelies. They had wheels for hands and feet.
Good Lord, dude! Why would you bring that back up in my mind?
Just add it to the elements of it, man.
No, you're right. And it was just, this movie's insane. It's made by what I feel like is an insane person. His name is Walter Murch. Walter, I hope wherever you are, you're suffering for what you did to me. No, I'm just kidding.
He might be dead. You can't say
I
that.
know. I'm sorry. No, that's what I mean. I just mean this movie. I'm sorry. It's triggering me so much. Sorry, Walter. I'm sorry about that. But this movie, it's just giving me nightmares as a kid.
So how old were you when you saw this? This is 85,
9,
right?
10 years old.
Okay. So you saw it in the theater or?
No, it had to be on television.
Okay.
It had to be.
Okay.
I would not go to the theater for this. There's no way.
Okay.
But the imagery just stuck with me. The mirrors. I don't know why mirrors have been a big part of my memory. Again, I didn't go back to research it. I didn't want to go back and look at the trailer of this movie. I did for just a few, for a little bit. I was like, no, it's all right.
So real quick,
It sticks with me.
Are you are you into the supernatural stuff in real life?
I mean, clearly no. I mean, movie wise, that's not my entertainment cup of tea.
Well, the reason I asked is because you said something about mirrors stuck out to you.
Oh, okay.
I've read that in real life, mirrors are seen in the paranormal world as portals.
I think I've probably heard something like that before, but no, that's not what it is. It's just an element of the movie.
Gotcha.
It is dark. It is used. I believe it uses puppetry, but it's that dark 80s made for children. Like this is I've talked about this before. I don't know what they were doing trying to scare kids, what they can do. Like back in the 70s and 80s, like scaring kids was like something people wanted to do, seemingly especially based on the kind of the stuff that we have now. But it was just so much fear-based things that were in children's entertainment. And for me, this is the culmination. This is the movie for me that represents that the most. This is The Wizard of Oz, a sequel to it. This is an addition to it, and it's so dark, and it's so scary, and I can't. I have a hard time even just thinking about.
Well, do you think maybe this movie and others in the same vein that were out released throughout that decade,
Right.
they kind of spoke to where we were as a society? I felt like we were always constantly on the brink of war because of the whole issue with Russia.
I'm sure. Yes.
So some of that I think bleeds over into our entertainment as well.
Right.
They want you to stay in this mindset of fear, even if it's under the guise of entertainment. We want you to remember, hey, anything bad could happen in real life at any moment. We're going to put that in these movies as well, so that you don't forget.
The last place that should permeate is children's entertainment.
I mean, I think fear
I get it.
Fear
I
is
get
everybody,
it
though,
for
right?
adults.
Yeah.
But to be creating something for children.
But children are afraid as well in real life. So I mean, why not show us that in entertainment as well? Because a lot of entertainment reflects reality.
But
so why not show us that as well?
Yeah, there are horrific things that happen to children, no doubt. But we shouldn't show that to children. Okay, that's the point.
Well, if it's a cautionary tale, right? Show these kids so
parables. I get it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a point behind it. I don't feel that's the point with the Return of Oz. Return to Oz.
Okay.
It is simply there because for me, it feels like an adult at some point in this gets his rocks off or her rocks off on scaring children, and I don't like that.
Well, again, we're talking about the 80s, and we know what happened a lot with these child stars in the 80s. So,
jeez Louis.
Maybe they're trying to tell us without trying to tell us. You've heard the phrase.
I don't understand. I mean, looking back on it now, I really don't get it. Like, it makes me angry to the point. But I was exposed to this as a child. Again, look, I'm triggered. You can tell I'm triggered.
I can definitely
right now.
tell.
That's what this film did to me. Avoided at all costs. It should be burned and never seen again. In my humble opinion, again, Walter, I don't wish you any war. But dear Lord, dude, why? Why did you make this film? It wasn't for kids. It shouldn't have been for kids. Why did you make this film and scar me so deeply as a child?
I almost put that on my list.
It was there for you too?
It was almost there for me. But
I thought it was just me.
No. I think anybody who saw this as a child or in somewhat child age had a little bit of fear and PTSD from watching it.
Right. I connect it. It's akin to me to the music video Thriller. Like, love the song, the questionable artist at this point. Not at the time. At the time, it was the greatest thing ever. But the scariness of that, that wasn't made for kids necessarily. That was a music video mainly for adults. Kids would watch it certainly, but this is made for kids.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe because I wasn't part of the marketing for that. Maybe they were trying to make it for adults. This is Return to Oz, the adult version. That's why she's in a mental hospital. But because it was connected to Oz and it was made by Walt Disney, I think it just automatically assumed this is for children, and no child should have watched that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm saying that, and somebody at home potentially screaming like, "I love that movie!
Yeah, but
it's the greatest movie ever!" But total different
To
experience.
counteract what you just said, Disney also gave us Wolverine and Deadpool. Not for kids.
Yeah. Well, again, Walt Disney in the mid '80s, '70s, and stuff, they were not known for Deadpool and Wolverine at all. They were strictly childlike entertainment. Or teenager entertainment. I don't think they were necessarily creating adult-themed movies.
I got it.
Maybe they were.
What if Return to Oz was made for bullies? It's a message for the bullies. Hey, don't treat kids like this. You're scaring them. Stop it.
Oh, I'm sure there's some kind of lesson to be had in that. But see, there were similar elements of this movie that were in the Never-Ending Story, and I'm kind of like the Never-Ending Story. but there were some horrific things that were in that too.
Yeah, we talked about that in a previous episode. Yep.
Yeah, dude. We're just revisiting them all. This is the worst of all of those to me.
All right, well, I have to pee really bad, so I'm going to get to I'm not going to rush through them, but I would like to get to the next
Why
one.
don't you just go?
No.
We'll pause.
No, I want to get done. I'm in the groove.
All right, go.
When I leave and then I come back and
I've only got one left, and I don't want to talk about it. So
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would still watch that movie today, by the way. Actually, I want to watch it. Return to Oz. Just because I haven't seen it in so long.
There's part of me that wants to exercise it from my mind as an adult, but I don't know if I want to go down that road. I mean, you might have to watch it with me to help me get through it or something.
I don't know how you do it, but it seems like every episode or every other episode, you find a way to give me the segue on a silver platter.
Here we go.
Because you just talked about you wanted to exercise. So I'm going right into horror films now. I really can't, it's not on my list without one horror film.
My whole list could have been horrible.
This is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This is based on a true story, directed by Scott Derrickson, who gave us The Earth Stood Still, Sinister, Deliver Us from Evil, Doctor Strange, and Black Phone.
He did the Doctor Strange movie?
The first one. Oh. He wanted to do the second one, but didn't get that. It was Sam Raimi. But since then, side note for listeners, if you care, leaks of his original script and plan for the sequel for Doctor Strange are out there, and it was going to be much darker than what we got. And I kind of hate we didn't get that. But we're talking about The Exorcism of Emily Rose, based on a true story. In this movie, I've seen pretty much I've seen every mainstream horror film that deals with exorcism and religion. Because that's just kind of like, that's my bag. If you're talking about horror films, one of my favorites, it's the ones that deal with the paranormal and religious aspects. I was born and raised in the church, so, this is not a religious podcast, but I believe in demons and angels, all that stuff. I believe in possession and all that. So, seeing this when it came out, to this day, probably one of, if not the most scariest horror film I've ever seen.
Jeez, that's like a lot for you.
It is a lot for me because, it showed true depictions of what the character Emily Rose went through while she was being possessed by this demon. So in the movie, I guess I will kind of preface this, and I said I wasn't, but I will. There's legal controversy in this story. And what happens is this priest tries to exorcise Emily Rose, and she dies during the exorcism. So the priest is on trial for murder. And this is all based on true story. Mm. But she's a college student, I think, in the film. Emily Rose is played by Jennifer Carpenter. She's from Dexter, if you're familiar with that show. The priest is Tom Wilkinson, Falcone from Batman Begins. Mm-hmm. And Laura Linney is the lawyer that's trying to defend him. Mm. Anyway, some of the moments with just Emily and basically in this religious battle with the demon that they depict in the film, I think about to this day. I'm not going to say it because you're here, and I know I don't want to trigger you any further.
Thank you.
But there are some things that happen when it's just her, and some of it's in the trailer, but a lot of it is not, obviously, because they want to keep the good stuff. I hate to say good stuff when I'm talking about exorcism, but
right.
And she died for real, but a lot of the more dramatic aspects of the film are left out of the trailer, but they give you some stuff.
Probably couldn't show it.
And probably because, yeah. But it's something I think about to this day. Like because I sleep in complete darkness. I don't like light. I don't like bright lights during the day either, but there's still times where when I turn off my lights and I get ready to lay down, sometimes I think I see something in the corner of my eye in the darkness. And sometimes I'll think about some of the moments that happen in this movie that are very intimate, that happen with her. Nothing sexual, but it's just her and this entity, whatever it is. And yeah, I haven't been able to bring myself to watch it again. Any other horror film that I've seen in my lifetime, I've been able to go back and watch. And there's some other scary ones that could be, that can compete with this movie in terms of how scary it was for me. But this is the one that I keep saying, I need to go back and watch it. I want to go back and watch it, but I can't quite get the nerve to get over the hump to watch it. I just can't do it.
Dude, okay, so we're on this. This is a train I did not want to get on, but we're on it. So I'm going to go ahead and ride it out quickly because I don't want to have to go. I feel the same about this movie. The final movie on my list.
Let's go. What do we got?
The number 23, 2007's. This is the line for me of, look, coronavirus and going through that made me more of a hypochondriac. Like I always have now sanitizer with me.
I remember because shortly after things started to kind of normalize, quote unquote, with that, we would make plans to meet, and you would pick like a time where the restaurant wouldn't be busy.
Yeah.
Whereas before, we didn't really pick a time before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, we picked a time that you picked a time where you knew it was going to be less busy, less people around.
For sure, initially after I was doing that.
Yeah.
Now, well, I think before and even now, it's more because I'm a friggin' old man. I don't really want to sit in a busy restaurant. But no, the number 23 from 2007. This is a movie I went into. I think the trailers kind of tricked me a bit.
How so?
I didn't think it was going to be as intense as it was, and to the point where like he's seeing the numbers everywhere. I kind of find myself sometimes doing that, and it scares me a bit. There's a particular number I'm thinking of right now. I'm not going to mention it because if I do, I feel like you'll start seeing it everywhere, and I don't want you to start seeing it.
Is it 5?
No.
Okay.
No, it's anyway. I can't. I don't want to.
All right.
I don't want to give it to you too, because then I notice. See, right now I just notice it, and I'm like, But if I really was seeing 23 and seeing that number, I would be like, okay, I could see myself going down this road. Is my scary part of it.
All right. Well, I have a personal story about a number after you get through.
Okay.
I don't want to.
So this movie stars Jim. Like I'm trying to get through it really quickly. Stars Jim Carrey, Virginia Madsen's in this movie.
She is in there from Candyman, which would you would.
Logan Lerman's in this movie.
Oh, young then.
Yeah, 2007. Directed by Joel Schumacher, the late Joel Schumacher, the man responsible for the Batman films.
I did not know that he was
the bad Batman films, Batman and Robin.
Batman Forever.
I kind of like Batman Forever. Kilmer, man, it's pretty good. All right, so this one, the synopsis is a man becomes obsessed with a mysterious book that appears to mirror his own life, leading him down a dark path of paranoia and madness as he uncovers the significance of the number 23. Essentially, in this movie, he starts to see the number 23 everywhere, and he starts to see it's a kind of a snake eating its own tail. He just sees conspiracies and the number everywhere until he just goes down a rabbit hole that makes him insane, basically. And the reason I even wanted to see this movie, now that I'm remembering, is that I thought it would have some kind of M. Night Shyamalan type ending. They're all about this mysterious book, and I wanted to know the reason why this book so mirrored what he was. And ultimately, the answer for me was insanity, but the number thing. Really, I didn't know I would be just so triggered by his recognition of the number 23. And obviously, it's the title of the movie. You should think that it's going to be a big part of it, and it was. But for me, it was more about uncovering the mystery of why this book is what it is. In the end, it just became, this is
like a MacGuffin almost, right?
Yeah, this is an obsession that I could fall down the hole with maybe pretty easily, and that this triggered me to a point where I cannot watch this movie again.
See, again, I think there are certain movies that are made with a certain intention to say, hey, this could happen to anybody. I think a lot of movies can prey on the fears of this man in general,
right?
And kind of like Return to Oz, you talked about in this movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
For you,
these all could be like cautionary tales. Some of these things could happen in real life, and we're going to show you this is what is a one possible future if this befalls you.
Right, like they're warning signs.
Yeah,
that'd be a great way to look at it. Is they are warning signs. I'm going to take this warning sign as for what it is, and I'm going to avoid it ever again in any movie like it. So again, I went into it wanting to uncover the mystery, and what I really uncovered is that I might have my own issue with numbers and seeing them over and over again that I don't want to open the door to.
Yeah,
so this opened the door, cracked the door open to the possibility for me, and I never want to open it again.
Okay.
So that's why it's on my list.
I love
it. And I hate that I had to talk about it again. And I hate it after putting this list together with the last two that I even made this list as an idea.
All right. Well, I will try to make you a promise that we will never discuss this movie ever again.
I bet we will.
I'm sure we will.
We'll try.
So yeah, my personal story about numbers.
Yes.
Really quickly. My lucky number's 5. I don't know why that is, but it's always been like just a number that
I was associated with basketball jerseys or football jerseys, so I'm thinking about who are number 5s in the past.
Number of fingers, number of toes. I mean, I don't know.
I just think jerseys.
But here's where the obsession with the number comes in. the number has popped up randomly in a lot of weird ways in my life since I've identified the number as my favorite number. So I guess maybe that kind of, I just now realize this in
You're
real
just
time.
recognizing it more, but
Well, yeah, no. It
think it
gets
is?
worse. But I think
don't. Are you gonna open this door for me again? Are we gonna
no,
open this door?
no. I'm just I'm telling a personal
Yeah.
story. I'm being vulnerable.
Triggering, man.
So much so that I am counting the number 5 in any given scenario in my life. Like when I'm across from people, like I am with you, as you're talking, or if I'm talking, I'll count. Like your eyes, nose, and mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm constantly doing that in my head. It happens all the time.
Jeez, dude.
All the time. And I'll find 5 everywhere. Like it's like a subconscious thing that I'm doing because I've done it so many years now that it's just happening. It's like a thing I can't turn off. So if I'm driving and the middle line is the yellow line, right? The white lines, and it's got the little reflector piece in the middle, the dots. I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll do that. I was like, I gotta stop doing that.
Dude, yeah, that's some excessive compulsive behavior.
I mean, anything that has a shape to it, I'm finding a way to get 5.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, anything that has a shape to it, I'm finding a way to get 5 out of it. Like if it's a rectangular shape, and one of the corners has like an extra protrusion or something different, I have to end 5 on that.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's crazy. That's I don't want to say crazy. I say that just as a statement I always say when it's just mind-boggling. But that's, dude, I'm telling you, don't open that door, bro.
All right, I'll stay out of it.
I am like, I bet you there are people at home that feel the same as you. Mine is not that intense.
But I think for me, it's more OCD-ish than anything else.
It is
I think.
very OCD. Yes, I think so, bro. I don't know. I do have a thing about like locking the doors. You know, when I lock a door just to make sure it's locked. But I think that's more PTSD about maybe in the past I've left it unlocked and unknowingly.
Yeah.
And I just want to be sure. To the point where I'm jiggling the handle to make sure it's locked, but then it starts to feel like I have to jingle the hanger, or I have to jingle the door knob, or I don't feel complete.
Yeah, yeah.
Starts to get into that territory.
That's OCD-ish a little bit.
That is, yeah. But I think it's just more about I don't want to leave it unlocked like I did one time before that really traumatized me. You know what I mean? Dude, clearly this episode we are exposing some of our like mental vulnerabilities or things we need to maybe talk to a therapist about. Jeez.
Well, I'm always going to be an advocate for therapy.
Right.
Mental health is essential.
true.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
Let's get to this last one. 'Cause I'm done with this list, man.
Okay.
I don't want it
Yeah.
anymore. I don't want to do it
This has
anymore.
been a dark episode.
This has been rough.
If
bro.
there's any listeners that have hung with us the whole time,
This is super-
shout out to you guys. Resilience, persistence. I love
Super
it.
you probably some of them are loving it.
You know what? Our
I
fans,
have a
so
feeling.
because we're the top 10 movie podcast,
Yeah.
I'm going to start calling our fans the top Teninites.
Teninites.
The top Teninites. These are our Teninites.
Top Teninites.
Yeah,
All right.
see?
I like it.
All right, just had to get a little lighthearted in there before I go dark again.
Here we go.
And so I'm just going to end it with, now this is an actual short film. This is not another shameless plug again. This is an actual short film
Okay.
that you can only find on YouTube. This has been circulating on a few of those lists of like movies that are the most disturbing movies of all time that I came across in I think in one of my YouTube rabbit holes that I'm often going down. And this movie is called The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. It's about this this family, this black family. Not that race has anything to do with that. I don't know why I said that. But I think it stands out to me because these types of movies that tackle these topics in this film aren't usually portrayed by black families in film. So it did stand out to me for that reason alone. And I kept hearing and reading comments that this movie is bizarre, it's disturbing. Don't watch it if you don't have a high threshold for, twisted imagery and things that happen in the movie.
See, I'd
Yeah.
already left the room.
Yeah.
I turned the computer off, thrown it in the trash, and walked out of the room.
You would have given that comment a thumbs up, said thank you, and then on with your
Yeah,
day.
thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I'm intrigued now. I have a natural curiosity when I start this because so much of that is read online, and a lot of it's fear mongering, and it's like, okay, this probably isn't that true because more often than not, it's not. So I'm curious in that way.
It sparked your interest
It did.
rather than the opposite, as
It
it
did.
should have, probably.
Yeah. Now the director, this is Ari Aster. I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but he's directed Hereditary and Midsommar, which are both A24 produced horror films,
Gotcha.
and they're more Those two are more cerebral. Actually, Hereditary's got some freaky stuff in it too, but I didn't like it at first, but I have appreciation for it now. And Midsommar stars Florence Pugh. I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list. And people keep telling me I should watch it. So this is like a short film he did, Ari Aster did before that really became famous. Now this was also created with the purpose and intention of just shocking anybody who watches it.
Okay.
That's it. But it's about this family. It's a husband, wife, and their young adolescent son, like 14, 15 years old. A lot of just weird things are happening in the movie. And I'm just like, I'm already hooked because it's just their demeanor, the family dynamic is off. And you can't quite pinpoint it. So you ever had like a moment where it's like something's bothering you, but you gotta figure it. You gotta get to the bottom of it to see what's really going on. That's what I'm getting watching this movie, and then it kind of gets revealed towards the end. This is a spoiler alert. The son is sexually abusing the father in this movie. Yes, in one of the most bizarre M. Night Shyamalan-esque type twists.
Jeez.
It's maybe the most strange.
Okay.
And the messed up part is the mother knows. The wife knows, and it does nothing about it. She just acts like everything is fine. There's a scene in the movie where the son makes the father perform a sexual act on him, and the wife is in the other room, and it's just the camera on her. And she can hear the moaning and all that in the background, but the camera just stays with her. And I love when movies have something disturbing happening, but it's off camera, and we're left to just see how the actor in frame is reacting. Because that's oftentimes what makes it way worse than seeing it. And that's just like Irreversible, which we talked about, we'll talk about again. But the conclusion of the film, the mother finally does confront the son, and they have like this attack in the house, and she ends up stabbing him and killing him. But it's really disturbing the way the son's able to manipulate the father into doing these things and allowing these things to happen to him. Twisted, man, just twisted stuff.
Jeez Louise.
I don't trust kids anymore after watching this. Let me tell you.
Gosh, some of the horrific things that you have watched, I need to pray for you every day. Oh my gosh.
Listen.
Okay, my list was made up of movies that made me upset because they disappointed me. Your movies have a ton of crazy stuff. Oh, all right. We're gonna have to put some kind of a warning on this list. This one is gonna get real rocky.
Well, we gave a little trigger warning at the top of the pod.
Yeah, but it's more like spoiler alert.
No,
you
gave the spoiler alert. I gave the trauma alert at the beginning. So
we need to really, we got to pound that.
And then each of these before I went into them, I also gave an extra trauma warning. So
No. It's just the things that you're describing are so vile that I'm just like, how in the world did they even get away filming that and then showing that as a movie sometime?
3 of my 5 movies have to do with sexual assault.
I know.
To some degree.
Jeez Louise.
So I know we have female listeners. So this wasn't done to offend.
No, you guys. If you're offended, you should be offended that the movies exist.
Right.
Not necessarily that we're talking about them. We are talking about a list of that scarred us. My threshold for scarring is a lot less than Mike's. Mike, because he exposes himself to a lot more of risky material. His scarring is much deeper and much more traumatic than mine. Mine is just like, he didn't make enough box office.
I already know there's one particular listener who listens to the show.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to text her
and say,
skip this one.
Yeah.
Because she only really watches the animated movies.
Yeah.
Like, she has like a real tender heart. This
is my kind of listener, Ryan. What we're talking about. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is thankfully the end of this list. This one's been the most traumatic one we've ever had. So if you're listening to this and you got to this far, congratulations to you. You feel our trauma. I think we could feel the way I'm even approaching this. I'm like, I am triggered by this myself. So I can't imagine. If you're listening to a podcast that's for entertainment, this one's not the one for you from us.
Yeah, no, and we should drop this on Christmas Day.
No way.
I'm kidding.
There's no way.
I'm kidding. No.
So thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Please check out some of our other podcast lists. I promise they are way more non-triggering and more positive lists than this one. This one got a little rough. But again, I'm sure there's a segment of the audience that appreciates the honesty and maybe tell you some films to avoid or potentially even considering watching. But yeah, Mike, how you want to end this one out? I have no clue.
Yeah, in this case, normally, Mulley will kind of wrap by saying, "What is your favorite top list?" Don't do that for
Yeah, well, I'm not
this topic. I think I'm too traumatized to even have a closing. Just live your life. Try to find joy in the moments where you can.
Yeah.
My niece has this quote on her wall. Not every day is a good day, but you can find something good in every day. And I will leave you guys with that, and that hopefully brings us into a brighter place out of this dark spot.
Yeah, we need to bounce. That's a great way to bounce back. All right. Looking forward to a brighter day. Thank you guys. And we'll hopefully talk to you later.
Peace.